people who voted Conservative in Wakefield in December 19 are just deeply, deeply disappointed. They feel they can't trust Boris. They don't think he tells the truth. They don't think he's delivered Brexit properly. So they're very disappointed. So they stayed at home.
Yeah. And they will also be upset about the migrant situation and how that has not yet been solved either.
Correct, they are, although that came up less on the doors than the fear about the cost of living, which is absolutely full square, number one on people's concerns, and genuine fear about how they're going to pay the bills, and why the government isn't doing what people can obviously see staring in the face. You know, having done Brexit, why isn't the government, for example, taking VAT off fuel? So the Tory vote stayed at home. Just lock, stock and barrel, and the Labour vote came out in earnest.
Because here we are at the end of another week, it's another Friday, which is why you're here, and yet nothing has been done. We've had another week of indolence, if you like, from the Tory cabinet. They haven't reduced the cost of anything. They haven't given anybody a break on anything. They haven't. They've said that they're going to give pensioners more money. That's a good thing. You know, but we're slightly caught up with the RMT strike, which doesn't, in my view, appear to be having much of an effect on people's travel plans. More worryingly is the Heathrow British Airways strike, which we'll perhaps get onto. But, you know, another week goes by, we're practically in July, nobody's getting any help.
And that's the point, and everything seems very, very reactive. But I think the scale of the loss for the Tories down in Tiverton, they'd sort of written Wakefield off, but to lose Tiverton in that way is absolutely massive. And that's why Oliver Dowden has resigned. And there's something quite significant in his resignation letter, which is, it's the last few words of it, where he says, I will, as always, remain loyal to the Conservative Party. Very pointed that he didn't in any way profess his loyalty to the Prime Minister.
Right.
And
is Oliver Dowden a significant enough figure for senior Tories to be worried, though?
Well, I think as chairman of the party, you know, he's done the honourable thing, which is take responsibility for the losses. And the question is whether or not anybody else in the cabinet follows his lead. Because if they do, if anybody else of any significance says it's time for change and they resign alongside Dowden, then that creates much, much bigger problems for the Prime Minister.
I mean, Boris Johnson...
potentially terminal.
Yeah. Boris Johnson, of course, has been in a terminal state for quite a long time. People keep writing him off and he keeps bouncing back and popping his head around the door and going, I'm still here. And he's done that again this morning. He said that he's not going anywhere. He's going to continue the course, to stay the course, is one of his favourite phrases. But he's going to have to do something to make himself back into the good books of the people, isn't it?
From what we're hearing on the doors, I think if he is still leading the Tory party as Prime Minister at the next general election, then that's them done. And there will be a coalition. And here's the thing, you see.
And that's what people fear, isn't it, the coalition?
Well, fear. The point that we're excited by is the potential within 3 years we could have proportional representation. So you never, ever hear this expression on the doorstep. No, it's fantastic, because you never hear that expression on the doorstep, yeah, but it's a wasted vote, because every vote counts equally. And so if a party gets 5 or 10% of the votes across the country, they get 5 or 10% of the votes of the seats in the House of Commons. That seems fair and reasonable. And here's the real thing.
I'll tell you what seemed unreasonable was when UKIP had that great victory, and they only, I think, what did they get? Something like...
they got about 4 million votes, and they got one seat. Whereas you had the SNP, had 1.25 million votes, and they had about 45 seats.
Yes.
And that proves my point perfectly. There is no defence for first past the post whatsoever, and the only party now that actually wants it is the Tory party.
Well, there is a defence for it, because it's like the Churchillian phrase, isn't it? It's the worst case scenario apart from all the rest, because the rest are
that's such a negative way.
But they're actually worse. No, because
if you look at international examples where you've got PR, you've got voter turnout averaging at least 10% higher. Just imagine in the UK if an additional 3 million people actually voted in elections, you'd get much more democratic engagement, much more belief in the process. But would you not end up then
also with a kind of ragtag bag of people in Parliament who none of whom can agree on anything, and then they have to do these little grubby backroom deals which the people didn't vote for in order to get a bit of power? And that's what I worry about.
I think what you do is actually everybody can look at a broader range of options and say, actually, and competition is good between more parties. The issue with first past the post is it leads you down a path essentially of a duopoly of two parties. You've got it in the States with the Republican and the Democrats. You've got it here with the Tories and Labour. And it's so hard for anybody else to get a look in, that actually you reduce competition. And, you know, you're a capitalist, you like free markets. Competition is good.
I do.
But the way to encourage competition and new ideas is that you have fair representation.
Yes,
and that's
but the problem for running the country is you have a much more stable government if it's a party with a majority.
But what's wrong?
Because more people have voted for it.
What's wrong with a bit of constructive debate, dialogue, discussion, negotiation, and then arrive at a way forward? And you could argue, whatever you think, you could argue there was more stability in the Tory Liberal coalition from 10 to 15 than there has been since.
Yeah, but if you were a Liberal Democrat, you weren't happy about that because the Lib Dems basically sold their soul for a few pounds of silver.
Those were the choices they made.
Yes, but that's what I mean. It's a corrupt. It inevitably leads to a corrupt political party.
But to prove your argument, I think unfounded, Mike.
I'm glad you didn't use the word wrong there.
I held back because I know you're very sensitive to that word. I can see that. You find that very, very difficult to agree and admit. But look at the Scottish situation. Under a PR system in Scotland for the Holyrood Assembly, the SNP, they continue to reign supreme.
They do, however...
And so actually, whatever you think of their policies, and I don't like their policies, but they are strong.
Yeah, but they've had to let the loony Greens in order to make their policy. But it doesn't matter. It still means that the Green influence has meant that they've got this mad gender policy where they're saying that children as young as 4 years old can actually choose their own gender.
And we don't like their policies. Absolutely right. But that's not just because you don't like their policies. PR. That's not an argument against PR as a system.
No, I'm saying I'm not arguing against the SNP's policies. I'm arguing against the policies of a party who are crazy loons and who are not in power, are only in power because they've been given the power in order for the SNP to continue to be in charge. And that's my problem, because any government could do that with any mad party.
No, you see, you're mixing apples and pears and oranges all in one slightly unpleasant
and
cocktail.
Greens.
Because...
Kale.
Kale. Because, look, the reality is... PR is a system, and there's no such thing as a wasted vote. Every vote is treated equally.
Well, if you vote for Keir Starmer, that's a wasted vote.
But the point is, the principle of it is right, and therefore what people will say, you get more engagement, more different options, and that's good for democracy.
Tell me this, have you ever knocked on anybody's door, apart from when they mistook you for the stripper, and anybody said, oh, do you know what we really want is proportional representation? People don't want it. We had a referendum on it here, and it got chucked out.
It's changing, but a couple of reasons. First of all, that was 11 years ago. Secondly...
Was it really?
People say... Yeah, but is a vote for a small party a wasted vote? So that's the reverse side of the same coin. Then you say, yes, that's why we should have PR. They say, yes, you're absolutely right. And that is definitely...
Well, you're very persuasive.
Well, you know, that's rising up people's issues. Because otherwise you end up with people saying, my vote doesn't count because I'm I'm the other side in a safe seat, whether it's a safe Labour or safe Tory seat.
But then look at what's happened in Tiverton. That was a safe Tory seat, has always been a safe Tory seat. Suddenly now it's not.
And what you had, the only way of overturning it is massive tactical voting. And that's what's happening. And so,
well, it didn't do any harm that the incumbent was found watching pornography in the House of Commons.
Well, clearly.
I mean, I think that obviously had quite an effect on the people of Tiverton.
Clearly, as it did in...
and I'm told the people of Tiverton are also very, very sensitive to the cost of fuel. They spend a lot of time driving around in their cars.
It's a very rural constituency.
The other problem I have with PR is that if you have the list system, you basically vote for a party, but you don't vote for an individual. And you end up getting somebody you didn't want.
No, but you can have the best of both worlds. If you look at the Welsh and Scottish systems...
I don't want to be like Wales and Scotland.
It's a blend of... Well, they've got the same system. It's the Dehont system. It's part constituency members together with topped up by the list system. So you get the best of both worlds.
No, it's not. It's the worst of both worlds.
Absolutely get best of both worlds. There's no such thing as a wasted vote.
Nicola Sturgeon, for a long time...
more people voting.
Nicola Sturgeon got in as a parliamentarian into Scotland, into the Scottish Parliament initially, as a list candidate. She was never actually winning a seat. She does now.